Hey fourth grade, let's go ahead and talk about today's number talk. We are moving more into decimals. So we've been working with base 10 blocks all year. We know them as units, rods, and flats. So we're just going to continue to talk about that, but with decimals. And if we remember back to decimals, it's part of a whole. So I'm just assigning different values to the unit, rod, and flat. It all goes back to that understanding of we know that a unit to a rod, that's 10 times more because a rod's 10 times greater. You need 10 units to make a rod, and so on. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to try to figure out the value that's represented in the number below based on the value of these base 10 blocks. So my unit is representing 20 hundredths. Because I have a 2 in the tenths place, it could also represent 2 tenths. So I know that that as a fraction would be written as 2 over 10. My denominator would be 10. So I know going from a unit to a rod, like we talked about earlier, a rod is 10 times greater. As you can see, I have 10 units to make a rod. Because a rod is 10 times greater than a unit, I could do 2 tenths times 10, or what we've done in fourth grade is we've added decimals. So I could have 2 tenths 10 times. As you can see, I wrote that up the side of the rod to help me. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Once I get to a 10, I have to regroup, so I know that that's equivalent to one whole. Then I have another 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, which would be another whole. So I know that this rod is going to represent 2 wholes. So like a 2 whole number, 2 in the ones place. Now with a flat is 100 times greater compared to a unit because I have 100 units in a flat. So I have 100 2 tenths. So I could do 2 tenths times 100 because that's how many units I have in this flat. With your knowledge of our base 10 blocks we've been working with all year, you know that a flat is only 10 times greater than a rod, and we know our rod value is 2 wholes, so 2 whole numbers. So I could have done 2 times 10, which is 20. So I know the value of my flat is 20 wholes, so like the number 20, the whole number. So I'm going to go down to the value represented in the number below. I have to look at these base 10 blocks. Here I have 4 flats. Well, I know one flat is worth 20. So I have 4 of them, so I'm going to write a 20 over each of them. Something that we could do very quickly is 20 times 4, and we know that 20 times 4 is 80. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to count my rods to see how many rods I have. And when I count them, I see that I have 12 total rods. So I can do 12 times 2 because one rod is worth 2 whole numbers. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, and 24 because I know that 12 times 2 is 24. Next we have our units, and when I count my units, I see that I have 8 total. I know the value of each of those units is 2 tenths or 20 hundredths. Those are equivalent decimals. I went ahead and labeled them all, and now I'm going to count by twos because that's something I can count by easily. And once I get to 10, I know that that's where I need to regroup. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I have one whole because it's a 10, I'm regrouping, and I'm using decimals. I got to my whole. I'm now just showing you what that looks like with repeated addition and how I'm going to regroup. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I leave my 0 and I regroup that 1. So now I have one whole. Then all that's left is to count the remaining 3 that I have. So I have 2, 4, 6. I cannot make another whole, so I know that that is 6/10 or 60/100. So when I add those together, I get 1 6/10 or 1 60/100. They're the same value. All that's left now is to add my base 10 blocks. So I have 80 plus 24 and then 1 6/10, and I'm making my other two whole numbers decimals by placing a decimal point and a 0 in that tenths place. So when I add them all up, I get 105 6/10. For our next number talk, we're moving more into fractions again. I'm just taking these manipulatives and giving them a value. So yesterday's number talk, we learned that 3 triangles make one trapezoid. So a triangle is 1/3. In small groups, we used to be able to take these triangles and stack them on top of the trapezoids to see it. Here I'm just trying to draw it for you. So you can see that 3 triangles are going to make up a trapezoid, and each of those triangles is worth 20. So I'm labeling each of those triangle partition sections as 20. So you can either use repeated addition or you could do multiplication. So we have 20 times 3, which is 60. So each of those trapezoids have a value of 60. We need to know what B equals, so we can either do 60 times 3 because we have 3 trapezoids, or you can use repeated addition. But I know that 6 times 3 is 18, so 60 times 30 is 180.